In this review, I'm having a look at the current state of mid-range gaming by putting a 9600KF through its paces with a 2060 Super. Good afternoon and welcome to Turbo Tortoise Tech. If you're new here, my name is Reese, 4Ps from KFC or Wookie Triple XL, whichever you prefer. And in this review, I'm doing a little bit of something different. I'm having a look at the RTX 2060 and the Intel 9600KF to see if the best of yesteryear mid-range gaming is dead or if it's still got a good heartbeat to it. So to do this test, what I'm going to do is be comparing it to what was considered a high-end build when we first started this channel, which back then I had a 2700X, a 1070 Ti, 16 gigs of the good 3200 MHz memory, the Corsair 3466 kit, which at the time was the only thing that could run at 3200 CL16 on those Ryzen platforms. And as I've alluded, on my left over here is our 9600KF build. So it's got a 9600KF, which I've clocked to a very healthy 4.8 gigahertz thanks to the ROG Strix LC cooler, which I've attached to it, and then the 2060 Super ROG Strix edition as well. Both systems are running on Hikvision E2000 SSDs. At the time, actually, I had a Plextor MLP19, I think is the model number, but it's a 256 gig NVMe with a 3000 megabits read speed, so I don't think that there was any bottlenecks on testing even at that time. Now the 2060 was actually a replacement for the 1070. The 1070 Ti is just that little bit further, so you would think the 2060 Super would be quite in line with that, and both of them were ROG Strix cards. Actually, I had the 1070 Ti ROG Strix Advanced Edition, which was the baseline sort of enthusiast performance graphics card that I ran with. 1080s and 1080 Ti's were quite a bit more expensive, and on a rand per or dollar per frame rate expense, the 1070 Ti made a lot of sense back then. Now you can buy 2060 Supers for less money than a 1070 Ti, and then they still have RTX features, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the review. Primarily though, I did testing on the game titles that I had access to back then, and there was no such thing as RTX or DLSS or anything of the sort. So for those benchmarks, we tested like for like on the games and on synthetics, etc. that I had back then versus now. And as you'll see as we go down the list, the results are pretty impressive. You're looking at 25% performance improvement. I do put down some of that performance improvement to the overclock that I've put on the 9600K, the fact that you can overclock its face off and that it actually does hold the clock. If you look at, for instance, the Firestrike benchmarks in the middle of the gaming runs, the clock was holding at 4.8 gigahertz, absolutely no problem. It did run into a little bit of throttling when I went into the physics tests, but the CPU actually never really went over 60 degrees. I absolutely love 6-core Intels. They're a lot of fun. They overclock like mad. They're pretty easy to cool. Even with a little Hyper 212, I did manage to keep it at 74 or less pretty much all the time. Obviously, this is considerably better, being a 14 degrees improvement. It lets me run in at 4.8 gigahertz all the time, so the thing sits there and whistles away on the test bench. I did as well have 3600 megahertz memory for this, which is a little bit quicker, 400 megahertz quicker, about 10% actually on the RAM speed, but that obviously doesn't result in a full 10% performance increase. It's more like about 5%. But when I bought those 3466 kits, they cost me 3,300 Rand. Now you can buy a kit like this for 2,000 Rand or less. So yeah, that's a nice 30% discount actually. And mid-range gaming is going exceptionally well. CS 410 average frame rate, I mean 360 Hz monitors with G-Sync may have seemed like they were out of reach, but now with a 9,000 Rand graphics card, you can actually get there quite comfortably. Another great question, and point on RTX is DLSS and how well that actually works these days. It works so well. When you turn on RTX now, it doesn't go to 12 frames per second. It's almost identical. The performance knock is almost negligible with that technology that NVIDIA is developing. I thought it would be quite gimmicky, but every single iteration of it that I've used, even on like the 3090 when I was doing DLSS with that, suddenly games like Metro, which are absolutely back-breaking, could run at like 80-90 frames. And now with this, we can do the exact same thing. So even though there are a bunch of new processors coming out and a whole bunch of new graphics cards, if you bought this generation of product, is your product dead? No, you can still get a completely viable gaming experience off of this. And what's really nice is if you're buying like a new Intel, if you wanted to go in the same vein as this, for instance, a 10400F full upgrade kit with like a really advanced board and stuff is going to cost you less than 10,000 Rand, and you can put like a good NVMe in that spec and good RAM as well with a good cooler. The pricing and stuff, compression that's happened in the last generation is just, I gotta give it a little perfection symbol. In closing, have you got an Intel 9600K? Put cooling on it and overclock it. One of my mates actually has this set up and isn't doing that. Please join me in asking, what is wrong with you? Oh, and lastly, one other thing is, if you don't have a 2-meter RGB strip attached to your machine, are you even a gamer? I mean, this adds 10 FPS to my eyes as well. Anyway, I do hope you guys have enjoyed this little check-in on mid-range gaming. If you have, then hit us up with a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the flip side.